Good morning, everybody. Welcome. Today we're announcing a Democrats task force on border security. I think it's important for Democrats to talk about strong border security and still be respectful of immigrants' rights and values. For so long, the Republicans have had a narrative about the border being a dangerous place and out of control. And I think it's important that Democrats also have a narrative about border security. We care about border security. We know some of us live at the border, and we understand what the border is all about. It is also important to note that we're calling for action. We certainly want to see the Senate border deal pass. You know, Republicans have been calling for securing the border. Finally, there's a strong border deal done, and they don't want to bring it up for a vote itself, number one. Number two, I would like to remind folks that for the last two appropriation cycles, and I sit as a ranking member for Homeland Security on the appropriations, the last two appropriation cycles, where we added $2.4 billion for CBP, that is for Border Patrol, adding new agents, support staff, the bonuses, the retention, everything for border technology, $2.4 billion. Every single Republican that's still in the House, except for two that are still here, voted against putting money for border security. So again, it's not only talking about narratives, but it's taking action, and this is why we're here. We're asking to support funding for appropriations when it comes to Homeland, not like just only two of them, the last two election cycles, or should I say funding cycles, but also to put the Senate bill on the floor. So with that, I will allow the next member to speak, and Mr. Mike Thompson by seniority.
I want to thank Congressman Cuellar and all my colleagues for stepping forward on this very important issue. I'm here wearing a number of hats. I'm the grandson of immigrants. My district depends heavily on immigrants for the work that they do and the value that they bring to our community, and I represent a border state. It is incumbent upon everybody in Congress to be willing to work together to bring order to the border, to make sure that our country and the border states are secure, and make sure that immigrants are respected and are treated fairly. So I'm excited about working with my colleagues to figure out how we can come together, and especially in a divided government. We need to be willing to work together to make the compromises to get things done. So thank you all for being here, and I'll turn it over to the gentleman from Pennsylvania, Mr. Cartwright.
Thank you, Mike. And thank you all for turning out today. I'm Congressman Matt Cartwright from Scranton, Pennsylvania. And I'm here to make the point that the United States of America is and always has been a nation of laws. Now, I'm a lawyer, and I hope you'll indulge me while I talk about the law for a couple of minutes. In March of 2020, when the pandemic showed up, the Trump administration began invoking Section 265 of Title 42 about expulsions because of the pandemic. They did that for 10 months until the end of the administration. On average, they expelled, these are not deportations, they're expulsions. They expelled about 50,000 people a month based on Title 42. Then the next administration, the Biden administration, continued Title 42 expulsions for another 28 months, on average expelling in the neighborhood of 100,000 people per month. May 11 of 2023, CDC declared the pandemic was over, and so the legal basis for those expulsions expired, and and then after that, Title 42 could no longer legally be used. The Biden administration has stated that if Congress enacts a new law giving it the authority, the legal authority to continue expulsions because of the press of the numbers coming across the border right now, they'll do it on day one. But even after Senator James Lankford, a very conservative Republican in the Senate, cobbled together with the administration's help and support and cooperation, cobbled together a compromise bill to give the administration legal authority to do expulsions. That hasn't come up. The Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson, has said that it's dead on arrival. It's obvious that they're not looking for a solution. They just want to have something to complain about for the next election. I'm Congressman Matt Cartwright. I thank you for your time. I'll turn it over to Representative Ruben Gallego. He's here.
Tom Suozzi.
Tom Suozzi, folks.
Everybody. Yeah, I'm sorry I'm late. I'm not used to this Washington thing yet. Listen, everybody knows the border's a problem. The Republicans have been pointing out that the border's a problem, the border's a problem, the border's a problem. You ask them, what's your solution? And they say, it's a problem, it's a problem, it's a really big problem. But what's your idea? It's a problem, it's a problem, it's a problem. So I just ran for an election up in a hotly contested race up in New York, and this was a big topic of the campaign. And during that race, I made it clear that I would support the bipartisan solution that Matt was just talking about that was proposed in the Senate. You couldn't ask for a more conservative, ethical, intelligent Republican than James Lankford, who did everything he could to find a compromise with the Democrats, Chris Murray and Kirsten Sinema. And right now we've got a situation in our country where the people that are standing here as part of this caucus are saying, we're going to do everything we can to come up with a solution. And I, for one, support the solution that was proposed in the Senate. I'll support any bipartisan compromise that will actually get this issue addressed. But the Republicans refuse to actually move forward because President Trump has told them, we don't want to give Biden a victory. We don't want to give him a win. We want to campaign on the chaos. Well, that's appalling. That's the most irresponsible, most cynical thing you could do in politics. So this group is going to work together to try and work with our colleagues to try and figure out how we can get the Senate bipartisan compromise or something like that to the floor and voted on, because we believe that border security is a real issue, and we believe it's our responsibility as members of the United States House of Representatives to actually solve the problem. Not just talk about the problem, but actually solve the problem. I just want to point out one important thing that the press has not reported on enough regarding the Senate bipartisan compromise. Everybody talks about the 5,000 people a day, 5,000 people a day, 5,000 people a day, and the Republicans say, we don't want 5,000 people a day. Please understand that the 5,000 people a day of asylum seekers, which when the system is improved with more border agents, more immigration judges, more wall, more detention centers, more money for states like mine and cities that I represent, to address the migrant crisis they're facing, all those different things. We're also speeding up the asylum process, which now can take 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, in some cases 10 years to resolve. Under this system proposed in the Senate bipartisan compromise, those cases will be resolved in a matter of weeks. So the 5,000 people that apply for asylum, 90% of them will be adjudicated to not be eligible, and they will be sent back right after that few weeks period. So 90% of 5,000 or 4,500 people will be deported soon thereafter their adjudication. So it's not 5,000 people a day, it's 500 or less people a day, and it'll address a whole bunch of other issues that we face in our country with this backlog. So I want to thank my colleagues for recognizing how important this problem is and for agreeing to work to try and find a bipartisan compromise to actually solve the problem. And I want to thank co-chairman Henry Cuellar for inviting me to join this process. Thank you.
Good morning. Thank you, Tom. I'm Congressman Stephen Horsford from Nevada's 4th Congressional District, and I really want to commend all of my colleagues for their leadership on a very important and complex issue that actually requires thoughtful deliberation. This is an issue that is not going to be solved through talking points, but through working together. And I just want to be clear. Democrats have been and continue to be ready to work with our Republican colleagues to pass much needed and overdue border reform. And when Senator Langford and other conservative leaders worked with Senate Democrats for a package, it was the House Republicans led by Speaker Johnson. They demanded it. They demanded that it be part of the foreign aid bill. And then they wouldn't allow that plan to come forward in the House. So it's clear that we do need to take action. The question is, are they ready to take action with us? Our communities are flooded with dangerous drugs like fentanyl, which has had an impact on people of all ages and all backgrounds. From 2020 to 2023, overdose deaths in Clark County, which encompasses parts of the district in Nevada that I represent along with Congresswoman Susie Lee, increased 97%. These synthetic opioids like fentanyl are more dangerous than drugs like heroin, morphine, and they've grown the rates of overdose deaths nearly 22 times from 2013 to 2021. That's why I'm proud to have been working with my colleagues on several bills: the Stop Fentanyl Overdoses Act, the Interdiction of Fentanyl in Postal Mail at Federal Prisons Act, the Comprehensive Response to Fentanyl-Related Substance Act, and the Stop Fentanyl Now Act. These are common sense bills, solutions that we're ready to act on, that we're ready to lead on, that we're willing to work with our colleagues on. But the question is, are they willing to work with us? So I'm proud to join with this group of dedicated members on the formation of Democrats for Border Security. I've been to the border. I understand the issue, and we need to invest in the technology and border security and funding and resources that are smart solutions to securing and strengthening our border. It can be done, but we need Republicans to stop talking about the problem and acting to deliver. And with that, I'll turn it over to my colleague, Congressman Colin Allred from Texas.
All right. Thanks, brother. Well, good morning, everybody. I want to thank Henry Cuellar for his incredible leadership in bringing us out here this morning and for forming this group. I want to thank my colleagues for being here. You know, we're here because Democrats are serious about border security. I'm here because I'm a fourth-generation Texan. My family is from Brownsville, Texas, the very tip of Texas. My grandfather was a customs officer after serving in the Navy, fighting in the Pacific in World War II. My mom and my aunt grew up in Brownsville. I spent my childhood visiting my grandmother there. I know that our border communities are not just political backdrops. They're not just places you go to point out problems. They're places where real people live, where they're trying to raise their families. And I am sick and tired of politicians talking about the problem, about the crisis that we are experiencing at our border, but being unwilling to actually solve it. The cynicism of saying that I don't want to pass a package that will help us address a problem because I want to run on that in November is unacceptable to Texans, to folks in border communities, and to all of us here this morning. The Senate bill that was being discussed and that we still have a chance to pass was a serious attempt to actually make some real progress on securing our border and addressing this crisis with $20 billion in resources to try and secure the border. Just a few stats for y'all, because our CBP agents need this help. This bill would have provided 1,500 new CBP personnel, 100 new immigration judges, 4,300 asylum officers, and $1.4 billion for affected communities. It was a serious attempt. And what Texans need now is action. We can't wait any longer. We need to actually have some action here instead of just folks using this as a political problem. For me as a Texan, it's personal. But also for all of us as a country, we know that we have a broken immigration system. We can't just address this at the border. Our legal immigration system has to work better as well. That's why, in addition to the Senate bill, we should take up some of the bipartisan efforts that are out there to address our immigration system in a comprehensive way, like Veronica Escobar's Dignity Act, which I'm a co-sponsor of, and which I think is a bipartisan effort to try and find a way forward in terms of a comprehensive reform. That's what we all know needs to be done. That's what the American people know needs to be done. That's what Texans know needs to be done. Now we need to just have leaders who will actually do it instead of wanting to have these problems to run on in November. So I want to thank my colleagues for being here this morning. Thank y'all for joining us. And I'm proud to turn it over now to my fellow class of 2018 friend and colleague, Susie Lee from Nevada.
Good morning, everyone, and I want to thank the chair and co-chair, Henry Cuellar and Tom Suozzi, and the staff for pulling together this task force. I represent Las Vegas, Nevada, along with Stephen Horsford, and this is a community, an industry, an economy that was built on the backs of immigrant labor. But right now, we can all agree that our immigration system is severely broken. And we all know that any border security legislation, like the Senate bill that is sitting on Mike Johnson's desk, must be bipartisan. And every day, I have conversations with House Republicans, and just about all of them agree with me that we need to get to work to protect our border, to process asylum claims more efficiently, so those who are actually fleeing violence and persecution can come here to live, work, pay taxes, and strengthen our economy. And we also agree that we need to create a path to citizenship. But unfortunately, the far-right leadership on the other side of the aisle has decided to continue to use our immigration system as a political football. So I call on my colleagues to show the courage that all of my members alongside me here, that we need to address an issue that has affected so many families across this country, our national security, and our economy. And with that, I thank you all for being here, and I turn it over to Lizzie Fletcher from Texas.
Thank you so much, Susie. Thanks to all of you for being here, and a big thanks to our chair, Henry Cuellar, and our co-chair, Tom Suozzi, and all of my colleagues who are standing here with me today. I'm grateful to you for your leadership and for your seriousness on this issue. This is an issue that my constituents in Texas care about deeply. I represent a part of Houston, which is a city of immigrants like the rest of this country. More than 1 in 4 Houstonians was born in a foreign country. We care about what happens when it comes to what happens at the border and comprehensive immigration reform. And those are things that I think it is clear to all of us standing here. Those are things where Congress has failed. And it is up to us, and you see the leaders who are gathered today who are here to say, this is an issue that we cannot fail on. We simply can't. Americans are expecting us to solve problems, not just talk about them. And so we must act to address the issues at the border and to address our broken immigration system. And it is an opportunity and also our obligation to restore the confidence of the people in the Congress that we can work together, that we can come together in a bipartisan way as Republicans and Democrats to actually solve the problem. So my colleagues and I who are gathered here today, as well as President Biden, have repeatedly called on our Republican colleagues to join us in advancing common sense, bipartisan solutions to address these challenges in front of us. And I look forward to working with my colleagues in the Democrats for Border Security Task Force who are gathered here to pass sensible reforms that will address the record number of migrant encounters that we're seeing, that will provide the Department of Homeland Security with the resources that it needs, that will address the issues of legal immigration there are so many that we know about, that we have smart, common sense solutions ready to go if only we could get the partnership and the seriousness of people on the other side of the aisle. And importantly, we can pass laws that treat migrants with the dignity and the dignity that they deserve as they seek a better life here in the United States. So I look forward to working with everyone gathered here today, including Mike Levin, who will speak next.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, good morning, everybody. I'm Mike Levin. I represent part of San Diego and Orange counties in Southern California, not too far from our southwest border. I want to thank my good friends, Representative Cuellar, Representative Suozzi, for putting together this group. I am the proud great-grandson of Eastern European immigrants on my dad's side. You might guess that if you look at me or see my last name. What you wouldn't guess, though, is that on my mom's side, I'm the proud grandson of immigrants from Mexico. And I would like to think that a story like mine is still possible today. But what we lack today is a functioning immigration system. Our immigration system, as has been said by many of my colleagues, is broken. So here we are. We have this fantastic opportunity to come together, Democrats and Republicans alike, and work on the problem and come up with solutions. We know what the challenges are. These challenges are not partisan. We know we have issues with the asylum backlog and immigration judges. We know we need more border patrol and more resources at the border in areas in California and Arizona and Texas. And so it's not a huge shock that when Senator Lankford and Senator Murphy came together in good faith negotiations, they were able to put together a pretty thoughtful and reasonable proposal. But what has been a shock to me, now I've been here for 5 years, is that with this thoughtful and reasonable common sense proposal, what did Mike Johnson do? Mike Johnson, as has been said, who insisted on this proposal as part of an overall package for foreign aid, what did he do? He spoke to Donald Trump, and Donald Trump said, don't do this, not in an election year, don't give a win to President Biden. But what did President Biden do? He went and he said, let's work together. Let's work together. It's not about President Biden. It's not about President Trump. It's about solving this problem. And that's why we're here, to work together and to solve this problem. And we have to keep at it. So with that, I will turn over to my good friend, Chrissy Houlihan.
Thank you, Mike. And thank you to everyone to be standing here. I think you can see that in the time we've stood here, we could have voted for and passed the Senate's legislation. So, like so many Americans, I am also angry. I'm super frustrated. I'm heartbroken for what continues to happen at our southwestern border. There were 3.2 million encounters alone in fiscal year 23 at that border, and we can all see the national security implications with that number. In fact, I also had the opportunity to visit the border last month, and I can tell you, as many of my colleagues already have, that our system is indeed broken, but that it can be repaired. I saw the effects of important changes that we have made since we've joined Congress. Many of us here are from the class of 2018, and we've been able to see some of the progress that we have made, but there still is an enormous amount to be done, not just to make places clean and humane, but rather to actually fix the system itself. There's a lot of work to be done, which is why it's really hard to find the right words, and I think you've heard them repeatedly from my colleagues, about my profound disappointment and my profound anger at the brazen dysfunction of the Republican-led House when it comes to immigration reform and border security. And if you know me, I'm very, very reticent to speak about things in a partisan manner, but I have been left with absolutely no choice. Truly, Speaker Johnson has given me no choice here. He needs to find the courage to take his cues from the American people and from the Congress that he leads bipartisanly to let us vote on these bills. Let us remember the souls, both the migrant souls and the American souls, whose lives collide every day at the border. And I again urge my Republican leadership, our Republican leadership, to bring a comprehensive bipartisan border bill to the House floor. It is possible. It is possible, and we just need to act. It's my privilege now to introduce Representative Gabe Vasquez to the stage.
Buenos días a todos. Good morning. My name is Congressman Gabe Vasquez, proudly representing the 2nd District of New Mexico, and I grew up along the borderlands right across Ciudad Juarez. In fact, as the former co-chair of the Southwest New Mexico Border Security Task Force, I've seen the border on horseback, on ATV, riding along with Border Patrol agents, and every time I go back to my district, I check in on how international trade is doing at places like the Santa Teresa Port of Entry, one of the largest growing exporting ports of entry in the country. Now, since getting to Congress, I've thought about what comprehensive immigration reform will look like, even in my lifetime, in this modern era where Congress is more dysfunctional than ever. As a proud first-generation American who represents a border district, I've introduced a bipartisan package of immigration and border security bills, 4 that have been endorsed by the Congressional Hispanic Caucus that would address the broken immigration system and the challenges that we face at the border. But the reality is that these MAGA Republicans that control the House and instead want to put petty politics ahead of solutions would not take my bills up to the House floor, many of which are bipartisan and would pass in the time that we're hosting this press conference today. So to ensure that we get things done in Congress, I'm proud to stand here today with our co-chairs, with the Democrats for Border Security Task Force, because we know how to put people over politics and deliver results for our constituents. I look forward to working with my colleagues on this task force because we are the party that wants to solve this issue, while MAGA Republicans want to run on this issue. With that, I'd like to introduce my good friend, Representative Eric Sorensen. Thank you.
Thank you all for being here today. As unified Democrats, it is essential that we are advocates for our nation's security. We must also respect the rights of immigrants who want to follow our laws to seek asylum. I've heard from people in my district and across the country that security at our southern border should be a priority. But while more people reach out to their members of Congress, we still can't come up with any progress. It's especially frustrating since we have a bipartisan border bill in the Senate, one that was killed by the majority party because of the implications of their politics. The most productive things that we're doing in this Congress are bipartisan. This should be no different. Instead of conversations dominated by far right and far left voices, we need to have the folks in the middle that are willing to shake hands for the benefit of our country. House Democrats are ready to work for the American people on strong border security measures. This cannot wait until after the November election. Speaker Johnson needs to do what's right today. Put the bipartisan Senate border bill on the floor of the House today. Turning this issue into a political one does not work in Peoria, Illinois, just as it doesn't work in Shreveport, Louisiana. Let's address the record numbers of migrant encounters. Let's combat the flow of narcotics and fentanyl and provide the Department of Homeland Security with the resources to do the job that we need them to do. And with that, I'd like to invite my good friend and colleague from Illinois, Nikki Budzinski.
Good morning. My name is Nikki Budzinski. I represent the 13th District in Illinois, a downstate district similar to Congressman Sorensen in central and southern Illinois. I like to say I represent a place in this country in the Midwest that is very common sense, it's very pragmatic, and it demands action on the border. We have a border crisis right now that needs to be addressed in a bipartisan basis. We have a bipartisan package on the Senate floor right now that should be brought to a floor vote in the House. Speaker Johnson's failed leadership punting an issue that is a humanitarian crisis at the border. We also have a broken asylum system that demands immediate action. His failed leadership in punting this to a post-November decision fails the American people and the working families that I am so proud to represent in the state of Illinois. I stand alongside my colleagues today in demanding action, less talk and more action from our speaker. Thank you so much. And with that, I'm going to hand it off to my colleague, Wiley Nickel.
Morning, everyone. I'm Wiley Nickel. I represent North Carolina's 13th Congressional District. Like so many Americans, my constituents are worried that immigration and border security are being used as a talking point instead of a policy priority. Addressing the issue at the border shouldn't be a Democrat or Republican issue. It's an American issue. I'm committed to working across the aisle, putting people over politics with my colleagues here to secure our border and advance comprehensive immigration reform. A divided government requires bipartisan solutions, and we have to work together if we're going to get anything done. You've heard from my colleagues. We heard from our Senate Democratic colleagues who said privately there were 25 Senate Republicans willing to support immigration reform and border security in the Senate. That is a majority of Senate Republicans who were willing to stand in a bipartisan way to get this done. And then Donald Trump opened up his big mouth because he felt this would be a good issue for him politically. He wanted more pain and suffering at Henry Cuellar's district. He wanted more pain and suffering at Tom Suozzi's district, so he could run on this issue as an election issue. And we heard just last week, President Biden at the State of the Union call for working together. He called for compromise. He asked Donald Trump to join him in working together to get this done. It's time for House Republicans to get serious and come to the table so that we can make sure the American people are safe, our borders are secure, and our immigrants are processed with dignity. It's time to get this done. Now, I'd like to turn it over to Congresswoman from Ohio, Amelia Sykes.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Amelia Sykes, and I am the Congresswoman for Ohio's 13th Congressional District, and I am here with two pieces of good news. First, I'm the last speaker. And second, I am standing here in front of a group of dedicated Democrats who are willing to work to ensure that our borders are secure. Last month, I traveled to El Paso with several of my House Democratic colleagues to cut through the partisan rhetoric and see firsthand the real challenges that are faced at the southern border. We spoke with Border Patrol officials, migrants' families, local nonprofit leaders who all offered their unique perspectives about this crisis. Talking with these folks, one thing is abundantly clear: our immigration system is broken. I came back from the trip with a deeper understanding of how these issues at the southern border affect the safety and security of my community in Northeast Ohio. And it should come at no surprise to any one of us that people want to come from near and far to live in the greatest country in the world, to receive the benefits of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And knowing this, with laws that don't address the needs to humanely and appropriately and officially process folks who are coming to our borders, we have failed not only those folks, but our constituents. It will take all of us working together, Democrats and Republicans, to restore order at the border, improve pathways to legal status, and help address the asylum system. With this task force, we are demonstrating Democrats are ready to get the work done, deliver results for people, and make sure we put people over politics. I call on my colleagues on the other side of the aisle to put aside their petty partisan politics and join us in improving border security for all. And I'm going to turn the program back over to Henry Cuellar, our co-chair, to take questions.
Good job, Emily. Good job. We'll take a couple of questions from anybody.
You know, the current system was designed to deal with 400,000 people a year. 400,000 people a year. Executive actions have been done in the past, and this problem has continued to grow over the years. The only way you're going to resolve this issue of the border crisis is going to be to have more border agents, more immigration judges, more detention beds, and speed up the asylum process. That's the only way you're going to do it. That requires law by the United States Congress. Now, if the president wants to do more executive orders, that's fine, but that's not going to solve the problem. To solve this problem, you need to have action by the United States Congress. And this group has come together to say, listen, we see this bipartisan bill in the Senate. It doesn't do everything we want, but it will solve this problem. So let's do it. Let's move forward. So I think that one of the jobs of this group is going to be to continue to highlight the fact that we have a solution on the table. Will actually make the border better than it currently is. And the only reason it's not happening is for political purposes. I mean, there's nobody here, this is a very educated group of the members of the media, very educated group of members of Congress. Everybody knows that this was sabotaged by President Trump calling up Johnson and calling up the senators and saying, don't do this. Everybody knows that. That should be reported on all the time, because the only way to change things in politics is political pressure. And people want this solved. And it will only be solved if Republicans and Democrats come together with this bipartisan compromise.
I'll say this. First of all, I support the Senate bill. That's number one. But if that other bill would come in, it's bipartisan, and I would support it. I want to speak for them, but I want to push the Senate border bill because it's a lot more comprehensive. It's a lot more comprehensive. Senator Langford, Murphy, they all work together to put something together along with the administration. I've seen it. It is one of the strongest border security bills that we have. But if the other one would come up, it was on the floor, I would support it. I don't want to speak for the rest of the folks.
And there's some proposals being made with Fitzpatrick's bill that currently doesn't include humanitarian aid, and they're talking about including that now. That would make a big difference in getting more support for that.
And last question, Mika.
I'll say this, and look, we do know that in both political parties there are some folks that don't support the whole thing. I mean, we got that on the Republican caucus for sure, and yes, we might have some that might feel it goes a little bit. But I think somewhere in the middle, you got about 80% of Democrats and Republicans that want to get done. And I think if they would put the Senate bill on the floor, we would get it passed.
You're never going to get 100% unity. And the problem with this town right now is that the far right and the far left are controlling the debate all the time. Most people are somewhere in the middle, say, listen, like most human beings in the United States of America, that say, can't you just work together and get something done? Which is very doable. It was demonstrated that it's doable until an outside voice came in and sabotaged the whole thing. So we need to constantly bring that up any way we can to the public, because by putting political pressure on the people blocking this bill is the only way we're going to get movement. Right now, there's a reasonable compromise.
Yeah. Listen, I'll say it. I've been willing to criticize my party on this, and will be going forward. But I think what my colleagues have said is something I agree with, which is that there is a middle here, both of Democrats and Republicans, that can actually solve this. And yes, folks on the fringes, might have some issues with it. But every compromise bill that we come up with here, that Republicans and Democrats roll up their sleeves and actually try to get something done, usually results in good policy that helps the American people. And to me, that's where this is going to have to land. Immigration reform for us is going to have to be bipartisan. Our border security approach is going to have to be bipartisan. And when we don't act at the federal level, it's communities like ours in Texas that are the ones that are impacted the most. And so I don't have time to wait around for some kind of idealized plan that's never going to become law. We have to get something done now. And so my message to folks in my party is let's get this done, as it is to folks in the other party. But let's be very clear. This was taken down by cynical politics, folks saying that openly saying they didn't want to solve this problem because they want to be able to run on it in November. The American people should know that. Texans should know that if you're concerned about securing the border, it didn't happen right now because folks are saying, listen, I don't want to have this, I don't want to have a solution here, I want to have the problem. And to me, that's unacceptable. And that's why I think we're here to highlight that. It's not too late, though. We can reverse course, and we can still do the right thing.
What Colin just said, nobody disputes that. Nobody's coming out and saying, no, that's not what happened. Right. Everybody knows that's what's happened. The more you report on that, the more we hold the other side accountable for the fact that they played such a cynical political move here, the more offensive that will be to the public. It should be reported regularly. If President Trump or the Republicans want to come back to us and say, no, that's not what really happened here, then say that. But nobody's disputed that. There was a plan in place. President Trump came in and said, don't do it. I want to run on the problem. I don't want to give a victory to Biden. Nobody disputes that. That should be reported on every night because that's the most cynical, disgusting type of politics you could possibly have.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you, everyone.